Can you just explain to us what name changes are and why people tend to get them?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, a name change is exactly what it sounds like. It is going through a court process to legally change your legal name. So people get name changes for a variety of reasons. Sometimes folks are getting married and they might want to like combine their last names into a new last name. A lot of our folks who, are trans. They sometimes get name changes in order to have a name that better represents their gender identity as well. We do a lot of name changes at our clinic for trans folks who would like to change their legal name so that it better reflects who they are.
So how long does it usually take to get your name changed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, thing about the name change process is that the actual process of going about legally changing your name and the court proceeding is one thing, but what can take a longer period of time is updating everything else afterwards. So, usually what I'll tell clients is like, sometimes this seems like it's going to be like a big mound of paperwork, and it is, but a lot of it is just everybody wants their own form. But regardless of where you are in Ohio, your first stop for if you want to file for a name change is to file for a name change in the probate court of the county where you live. And you have to be a resident of that county for at least 1 year prior to filing for the name change application. So step number one is you go to the probate court. In this case, I would recommend calling ahead of time if you're planning on doing it now, because a lot of courts are not accepting in-person filings right now due to COVID. But regardless, step one is probate court in your home county, and you will fill out an application to change your legal name. And then the court will also ask for a filing fee. These range by county. I've seen them as low as like $70 and as high as over $200, $250. It totally depends on the county. Here in Cuyahoga County, it's $130, and that's payable by money order to the court. And you have the filing fee, you have the application for the change of name, and then you have to file a copy of your birth certificate, or if you're filing in person, to present a certified copy of your birth certificate to the court as well. And that needs to be filed at the time that you're filing your application. Some folks, depending on your county, will also want to see a copy of your driver's license or other state ID at the time that you file. Usually I just file a copy of that along with everything else, just so that the court doesn't have to ask me for it later. And then from there, next step is once that's filed, there's a requirement in Ohio that the announcement of your name change needs to run in a newspaper of local circulation for at least 30 days prior to your hearing. So what that means is that in those newspapers that pretty much nobody reads, like a Daily Legal News or Akron Legal News, there'll be like a little line in there that says like, hey, this individual is changing their new legal name to this, and this is when the hearing is going to be. So some courts will take care of publication for you. Other courts, you have to walk it down to the newspaper, take care of publication yourself. Some courts, when they do the publication for you, the cost of publication is included in that filing fee. For other folks, you might have to pay for publication separately. And then some newspapers will send proof of publication, which is like an affidavit that's stamped by a notary, directly to the court. And then some courts or some newspapers, you have to provide that information to the court. So if you have any questions about what the process looks like in your specific county, you can either give us a call or also the clerk of courts in that county will be able to answer your questions for you. And then you'll have a hearing before a magistrate or a judge in the probate court, and they will ask you why you want to change your name. They'll ask you if you've ever been convicted of any sort of offense involving identity theft. They'll find out if you've ever been convicted of any sort of offense against the child, or if you have a duty to comply with the sex offender registry in Ohio. And then, assuming all goes well, they'll provide you with a certified copy of a name change order. Sometimes that gets mailed out to you. Sometimes that gets sent to you, or sometimes that gets just handed to you that day, depends on the court. And then from there, you can take all those certified copies and you can update your other identity documents from there. So no matter where you are, your first stop is the probate court, then everything else gets updated afterwards. Usually from the time that you file in the probate court, they try to schedule those hearings for like 45 to 60 days out or so in order to make sure that you have ample time for publication. If you have some concerns that publication might compromise your safety, I really encourage you to give us a call and we can talk to you a little bit more about potentially ways to waive the publication requirement. So give us a call, chat with us about that. But basically, in short, first stop, probate court, second stop, everybody else to update stuff from there.
Wow. I had no idea about the publication rule. And my first thought was, what if it does compromise someone's safety, or what if someone wants to keep their name change anonymous? So there are ways around maybe not having to publish your name change in the newspaper, or is that always a requirement?
So there are opportunities to ask the court for a waiver of the publication requirement. Generally, the standard for doing that for adult name changes can be, pretty high. Like usually, you need to demonstrate that there is, a risk to your safety. So, for example, maybe you have a civil protection order against somebody, or you can present other good reasons to the court as to why publication would compromise your safety. The reason why we have this publication requirement is because the state of Ohio is super concerned that you're trying to run away from creditors. So the thought is that it's putting it on the record so that creditors and other interested parties who you might owe money will have notice of the fact that you're changing your name. So that's why it's basically like a notice requirement where everybody's on constructive notice that you're doing the thing to change your name. For minor name changes, the publication requirement still applies, but we found that generally it's easier to waive the publication requirement for minors than it is for adults. But again, very, very county specific. Some counties are faster to waive the publication requirement than other counties. So if you have questions about your specific county, again, hit us up at the clinic, give us a call.
It's my understanding and experience that judges are pretty notorious for running their courtrooms how they see fit, and deciding things sometimes based on personal idiosyncrasies or just their history and how they like to do things. And just the nature of that interaction, that when you go to court, you're usually asking the judge for something. They can grant what you're asking, or they can deny what you're asking. I know some judges have strong preferences for things like how you dress and how you conduct yourself in court. I wondered if you had any tips on kind of putting your best foot forward in those situations.
Absolutely. So for a lot of clients, taking care of their legal name change is the first time they've ever had to go to court for anything. And that can be really intimidating just by the fact that you're going to court for something. And it's a big building and it's a scary building for a lot of folks. So I get that. What I like to recommend doing, and again, this applies more outside of the COVID times, but I think that for some clients, it's been really, really helpful to go and file their name change application in person, just so that it's not the first time you go into the court building when you have your hearing, and that can be really helpful. Generally, name changes, sometimes they're actually in a formal courtroom. Frequently, they're just in the office with the magistrate, and they're not even in front of a big courtroom. So you can find out, if you have anxieties, the clerks of courts are usually really, really helpful, and they can tell you a little bit more about what the process looks like in that specific county. In terms of what to wear, I usually say dress like you're going to a job interview, and it's like your dream job. So for clients, I'll usually say, like, you don't have to go out and buy something new that, you don't need to go and buy a suit right now, but generally you want to dress, in a way that you're presenting yourself in the way that you would want to be seen in a professional setting. So no rips in your clothes, make sure all your bits are covered. I usually say, to make sure that you're not wearing athletic shoes. If you have like brown or black shoes, that's generally better. And then it's always really important to treat everybody at the court with respect. And I think that applies to lawyers too, if there are any lawyers who are watching this video. Always treat everybody at the court with respect. And that means not just the magistrate and the judge, but also all of the court staff. Treat the clerks with respect, treat the folks who are helping you with scheduling with respect, and they will make the process significantly easier for you. And they are generally very, very helpful when you are nice to them. With the magistrates or the judges, you should never interrupt them. You refer to them as Your Honor. When you're in court, just like you would see on Law and Order, they are Your Honor. And then, other than that, just generally being respectful, thanking people who help you along the way, asking the clerk, is there anything else you need from me right now? And being proactive about those things can go a long way in helping to not only kind of quell some of that anxiety, but also set you up for success.
What are some issues one might run into after they've changed their name? And how are there ways they can prevent those issues from happening?
Great question. So changing your legal name changes your legal name, but nobody is going to know that you've changed your legal name until you tell them you did the thing. So a lot of times where folks will run into issues is where they've updated some things, but they haven't updated everything. So I generally recommend that when you get that certified copy of your legal name change order, you immediately, as soon as possible, update things with your banks and financial institutions, with anybody that you owe money, with Social Security, and with the BMV. It is possible in Ohio to update the name on your Ohio birth certificate if you were born in Ohio. It is not currently possible in Ohio to correct the gender marker on your birth certificate. It's just us in Tennessee right now. We're the two holdouts. Everywhere else, you were born outside of Ohio and outside of Tennessee, you have a legal pathway to correct the gender marker on your birth certificate. You can give us a call and we can see if we can find you a referral in that state if you need assistance with doing that, or at least point you in the right direction. In Ohio, some courts will report to Vital Statistics your name change for you. Some courts, you have to do it yourself, but you should absolutely obtain a birth certificate in your corrected name. As far as the BMV goes and Social Security goes, you do have the ability to update and correct the gender marker on your Ohio driver's license or state ID. And also, even though there's not a sex marker that displays on your Social Security card, there is a gender marker that's stored in the Social Security system, and you're able to update that as well. Where a lot of folks run into issues is when one ID says one thing and another form of identification says another thing. So really, really important to update those things. I also highly recommend updating your name with your insurance providers. It's very, very important to have a conversation with your doctor before updating the gender marker on your health insurance provider, though. And the reason why is because usually health insurance providers are not set up for trans individuals. So a lot of times there are these arbitrary binaries between what procedures are covered and what procedures are not covered. So for example, if a trans man might need to get an IUD inserted and he's updated his gender marker with his insurance provider, they might say, well, we only cover IUD insertion and birth control for individuals who are listed as female in our system, so we can't cover this for you anymore. And sometimes there can be sex-specific exclusions for health insurance providers. So really, really important to have a conversation with your doctor about how updating your gender marker with your health insurance could, potentially impact your care. And sometimes those sex-specific exclusions can be solved with just a phone call. Sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated than that. So have that conversation. But other than that, very, very good idea to go ahead and make the updates elsewhere. The other thing that I would touch on too is because we cannot currently update gender markers on Ohio-based birth certificates, there's going to be a mismatch, right? If you update your gender marker on your state of Ohio ID, but you can't update it on your birth certificate. So I generally recommend, if you have the ability and the financial resources to get a US passport or a US passport card, passport card is not good for international travel, except for travel by land to Canada and Mexico. It's $75. A US passport is more expensive. It's around $140. But on both of those documents, you can have the correct gender marker display for you if you go through that process. And that provides you with proof of US citizenship that has the correct gender marker listed. So I usually advise clients, if you're able to spring for either the passport card or the passport and you have an Ohio birth certificate, that will give you, something where if you're applying for a job or you're applying for anything else that needs proof of US citizenship, you can provide proof of US citizenship that does not out you and out your trans identity in that process. So highly recommend, if you can spring to do the passport, that's your proof of US citizenship if you aren't able to update it on your birth certificate because you're born in Ohio or Tennessee.
I've seen a couple events. I think in the past we've partnered with a few other organizations. Of course, Trans Ohio is always a strong partner with us. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those events that I've seen that are, I think they would be like pop-up legal clinics or things that people can join. Even online, I've seen them, especially recently.
Yeah, we've been navigating this in our virtual worlds. So people still need name changes, even in the COVID times. So we've been partnering with our phenomenal community partners at Trans Ohio and also at Equitas Health to provide folks with free brief advice for legal name changes. So there are a bunch of attorneys that come together. This last one was primarily organized by Oliver over at Equitas, and they did an amazing job for setting up this virtual legal clinic. So if you have questions about the name change process, or even if you're just like, okay, I get the court part, but how do I do the driver's license thing? Or things like that, highly encourage you to check out the Equitas website and look on Facebook as well, because those events are frequently posted there. And the one cool thing is, even though we're all in COVID world right now and in this virtual place, a lot of folks who might not have had access to be able to get to like some of those in-person legal clinics in the past will now have the opportunity to actually connect with an attorney. So even if you're like on the other side of Toledo and I'm in Cleveland, you can dial in virtually and I can provide you brief advice on your name change. So I think it's a real opportunity for folks right now to either connect on the phone or connect in virtual legal clinics. So feel free to sign up for those. Also, if those aren't accessible to you, you can always contact us at the Equality Ohio Legal Clinic as well. We provide free representation to folks who self-identify as being LGBTQ+ and who are below 300% of the federal poverty line. So you can either do an intake on the Equality Ohio website, it's equalityohio.org, or you can give us a call at 855 LGBT law, just LGBT LAW, and you can set up an intake and we can chat about your name change there as well.
Recently, the state of California forced Elon Musk and his partner Grimes to change their planned baby name. Do you know of any name restrictions here in Ohio or more broadly in the US?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I actually don't off the top of my head. That being said, generally, I can say for minor name changes, the court's going to look at what's in the best interest of the child. So if you want to change your minor child's name to Harold Snuffleupagus or something like that, the court's going to be like, is that actually in the best interest of the kid? So it's always within the court's discretion on minor name changes into what's in the best interest of the child. We do have some case law in Ohio about kids who, maybe their parents got divorced and the parent wants to revert the child's name back to their premarital name. We have some case law there. But in terms of name restrictions in Ohio, I don't have an answer off the top of my head on that one. But generally the court is going to be significantly more concerned with name changes for minors than they are with adults. Last thing I would say is if you go on to the Equitas website, there is this beautiful legal name change packet that was produced in conjunction with Trans Ohio. And there's one for adults and one for minors. They were published in 2018, so some of the information might have changed since then, but I really, really like them because they provide a list of just like, okay, you're doing the driver's license, this is everything you need to bring to the BMV. Or like, okay, you're doing your social security card, this is all the stuff you need to bring for that. And I find that that's really, really, really helpful for a lot of clients in keeping everything organized. So highly recommend if you want to do it yourself, or if you feel like you can handle doing your name change without the assistance of an attorney. Highly recommend checking out that packet. If you think that you do need the assistance from an attorney, feel free to reach out to us, say hi. We love doing name changes because they're celebratory and awesome. So feel free to reach out to us.